This will be the most uninspiring, least creative presentation you will see at DLD. I'm not putting a man on the moon. I'm not inventing self-driving cars. I'm not even an architect that's building cool buildings. I'm a capitalist. I love money and I love winning. I'm not Donald Trump though. So what we're gonna do today is talk about why I believe capitalism or money it actually kills creativity. Because when money becomes an option in the form of capital raised, options are beautiful things in negotiations because you then have a choice. And when cash becomes a choice in a company, you typically take that choice and you miss a bunch of other creative solutions to whatever problem you're solving. So before we start, raise your hand if you've heard of the podcast or you're listening. Anyone? Yeah, okay. Let me get this. Can we get a microphone right up here? What's your Arthur? To Arthur in the blue. Arthur, stand up. Look back here. Give him a round of applause. This takes bravery a little bit. Arthur, I told everyone during the day, I'm like, how can I convince people to come down? And I just went around telling everyone, come join me in the sauna. And it kind of works. So these are all the fun people. So you're listening to the show. Why are you listening? And how'd you find it?
I found your podcast through DLD. I did some research of everyone that was here, and I stumbled upon your agency, and I listened to it, and I like the 15 minutes of ruthlessness that comes through. You get answers now.
You call it ruthless. Why do you say it's ruthless?
I think it's ruthless because you get straight to the point. You don't actually waste time with questions you don't waste time, you get straight to the point.
Very good, thanks Arthur. So guys, long story short, when I was 19, I was studying architecture at Virginia Tech in the States. I dropped out, launched a software company. I learned on YouTube how to code something called FBML. Raise your hand if you're a developer in the room. Okay, some back here. If I tell you, yeah, I'm a developer because I know how to code FBML, do I get developer credit for that or no? Just shake your heads, yes or no. You're nicer than my dev team. I was bragging to them going, I'm like a tech guy, I know how to code, and they're going, FBML doesn't count, right? It's not a real language. But I taught myself how to code FBML with a company called Heyo, H-E-Y-O. And over the course of 5 years, between 19 and 25 years old, we raised $2.5 million of venture capital. It was a SaaS B2B marketing company, grew to about $5 million in revenue, and I sold it when I was 26. And you'd think that's a great story, and whenever I complain about this, you get judged because you can't talk about selling your company and then complain about how bad it was, but no one talks about this, so I'm gonna use this platform to do that. When you wake up in the morning after a capital raise at a company, we did our convertible note. It was $550,000 from David Cohen, Dave McClure, Techstars, 500 Startups, kind of the whole shebang. And you wake up in the morning and you get messages from friends congratulating you, right? They see the TechCrunch article, and this feels like a big dopamine hit. It's a drug. And it's a drug that Silicon Valley lives off of. Maybe a bigger drug problem than any other drug we see in the United States. And what I'm gonna try and do today is decode that with numbers. So let me just kind of take a quick pulse. Raise your hand if you've raised capital before. Okay, great, hands down. The important thing and what I realized after we raised capital is when we would have team discussions, our team was about 15 folks at this point, any big question that came up when I challenged them, they knew the money was there, and that was a solution basically to every question. Fast forward 3 years, we raised an additional amount of capital, $2 million, same thing happened. And I started thinking about, does this mean money is killing creativity? And so I wanted to, again, try and code this, and what I did is I launched a podcast called The Top Entrepreneurs. It's a daily 15-minute show, and I don't give a damn about the guests. They come on, I just beat the hell out of them. Revenue numbers, ARPU, CAC, LTV to CAC ratio, ratchet clause, what was your liquidation preference in your Series A documents, everything in 15 minutes. It's rapid fire, it's aggressive. I didn't expect people would want to listen to this, much guessed why would guests want to come on? Well, it took off. So I'm now done over 500 interviews. And what I've done is I've taken all of this data, which isn't publicly available online. I'm talking revenue numbers, again, ARPU, CAC, stuff you can't really get anywhere else. And the data set I'm gonna provide you today, I want you just to understand my bias and understand the focus, because it won't be applicable to everybody, but you can pick and choose like a buffet. This is only B2B, business-to-business, software as a service companies, SaaS companies, in the marketing technology and sales technology space. Okay, just shake your heads if you're with me on that, all right? Is anyone directly in that space, like a home run, that's a perfect fit? We got a few people. That's the sample size. Of the 500 interviews, 150 of those companies were included in this data set. Roll it all up, it's about 5,000 employees across those 150 companies. Altogether, they've raised about $720 million, and they do about $700 million in annual recurring revenue. That's the whole data set added together. Okay, so that gives you a sense of a sample size that I'm working with in the data that I'm about to present to you. Additionally, when you start to ask, well, is that sample size indicative of the larger market, you can reference something like Lumascape or the marketing tech charts that get put out, right? Where they put all the company logos on the thing. And specifically, in the sales and marketing technology space, there's about 4,000 companies. So I've got about 150 out of 4,000, right? So I think that's important for you to understand. And what we're gonna just explore over the next 7 to 10 minutes are 3 specific numbers that I hope are revealing to you if I asked you a very simple question. If you're an investor with $10 million and you had to choose whether to put that money behind an entrepreneur who you felt was very resourceful or one that had a lot of resources, which one would you put the money behind? Right? Now, this is, comparing resourcefulness to how many resources you currently have is a difficult thing to measure because resourcefulness is very abstract. So the number that I use across these companies, which again, I don't think a study has been done on this because these are all private B2B SaaS companies. The number I focused on is revenue per employee. Wouldn't it be a beautiful thing if the first question you got asked at these marketing things was not how much money you raised, but how much money are you making, right? That would be a beautiful thing. So revenue per employee is what I'm measuring. And so the first thing, this little pop quiz to you guys, I want your feedback on it. Of the 150 companies, 100 of them have raised capital and 50 were bootstrapped. Now, by a show of hands, I want you to you have 2 choices. Do you think the bootstrapped companies have higher revenue per employee, or do you think the funded companies have higher revenue per employee? If you think bootstrapped companies had a higher revenue per employee, raise your hand. Okay, great, and hands down. And so everyone else, obviously, is the other one. From my sample set of 150 companies where I got all this data, okay, revenue per employee at a bootstrapped company was about $316,000 in ARR, annual recurring revenue, okay? That same number for funded companies, again, the funding sample size, about $720 million raised across 100 companies, was $116,000. So by almost 3x, bootstrapped entrepreneurs, okay, we're making 3x in terms of revenue per employee. You could argue they're resourceful. And I know data sets are hard to get your kind of mind on unless you have some real examples. So let me just tell you 2 of them. Anyone heard of kind of the scheduling space? You have Sunrise, Calendly, Acuity Scheduling, raise your hand. Or anyone use those products, right? So Gavin is an entrepreneur at Acuity Scheduling based up in Boston. He's doing about $400,000 in monthly recurring revenue, and he's got 20 employees, and he owns it all. It's totally bootstrapped, right? Another company in this space, right, is a company like Cirrus Insights, right? They've got about 200 companies based in Raleigh, and they compete with Yesware and TADUP and these companies. Those are some of the ones that, again, are self-funded or bootstrapped. On the flip side, so you can get a sense into the funding kind of cohort that I worked with, these are companies like Yesware, right, which has raised $30 million, led by Matthew Bellows in Boulder, Colorado, about 200 employees. And one of the things he's done is he's got a distributed team between Boulder, Latvia, right, and India. So when I point out these revenue per employee numbers, I think it's also understand that I challenge myself and why that could not be accurate. Well, one obvious reason is you could have, a lot of these bootstrapped entrepreneurs, they'll use sites like TopTal and Upwork and Freelancer to hire contractors instead of full-time employees. So that doesn't show up in the data, right? And then a lot of these companies with more employees, right, sometimes they have huge distributed teams where the salaries are significantly lower. So that might skew the data some. So again, revenue per employee at bootstrapped companies was 3 times as much as funded companies. The next thing I wanted to look at to try and determine if you had $10 million, would you put that money behind a resourceful CEO or one that knew how to and had a lot of resources, was looking at team size. Right? I thought that might be an interesting indicator. So I split the cohort up between 0 and 50 employees, 50 and 100, and 100 or more. Okay, another quiz for you. Those are your 3 choices. My question to you is, which one of those do you believe revenue per employee was highest? Raise your hand if you believe it was 0 to 50 employees. Okay, hands down. Raise your hand if you believe it was between 50 and 100. Raise them high. Okay, and hands down. 100 or more, raise your hand. Okay, statistically, there was no difference. They were all about $136,000 in revenue per employee. So that, I was kind of just trying to dig at data, figure out if there were any correlations. I could not find a direct correlation between team size and revenue per employee. I'll let you kind of take from that what you want. I don't have any key takeaways from that data point, but it was certainly something I explored. The last thing is what I think is most important, and it's kind of interesting, which was, if I put my investor cap on, my Ray Dalio investor cap on, and I'm looking strictly as a capitalist at, if I give an entrepreneur $1, how much, if I just look at them as an ATM, an unemotional ATM, how much money would I get back from them? So I explored companies that have raised less than $1 million and how much annual recurring revenue they drove per dollar of capital raised. I compared that to folks that have raised between $1 million and $5 million and $5 million or more. So does everybody understand the question? Another pop quiz. Your choices are, what is the highest, new dollars of ARR driven per dollar of capital raised? If you believe that was the companies with less than $1 million raised that had the highest, raise your hand. Okay, hands down. If you believe it was between $1 million and $5 million, raise your hand high. Okay, or if you believe the folks that raised more than $5 million drove the highest returns in terms of new ARR per dollar of MRR raised, raise your hand. Okay, that was a mouthful. You guys are like the PhDs in the room, right? This shocked me. For companies that have raised, and again, I don't know where this data is online. Rand Fishkin has quoted this when I've written about it at conferences. I don't see it anywhere online because no one has all these interviews with CEOs. These are one-on-one phone calls. Companies that have raised less than $1 million, for every dollar raised on average, as of about 3 months ago, drove $4.94 in new annual recurring revenue per dollar raised. Okay, you can write that down. So the ratio is $1 to $4.94 in ARR. That's like an ATM. You put $1 in at the beginning of the year, you get $5 back. Okay, a company that raised between $1 million and $5 million did about $2.50. Okay, and the companies that raised more than that raised the most money, were spending for every dollar of revenue or dollar of funding they raised, are driving 89 cents in new annual recurring revenue. All right. Now, what's this gentleman's name up here? Lynn, why are you laughing? Just yell it out. Are you an investor? Or are you, yeah. So here's what was interesting to me about this data. And then I wanted to put this in your heads and then have a conversation. So we're going to open up to questions very quickly, and we'll spend 5-6 minutes on questions. In the world we live in, again, there's a drug that comes in the form of there literally is a drug that comes in the form of a dopamine hit when a founder raises capital, finishes the blog post on their own blog, and has TechCrunch and Business Insider and everyone else release it. Right? They release it at 5, 6 a.m. in the morning, and then they sit in front of their Facebook feed and see how many likes that update gets, which is usually like the most liked one. And there's a real dopamine hit that happens. This is very celebrated. And I celebrate. The reason I know is that's what was driving me. Maybe I'm a little more psycho than most people. That's what was driving me when we raised capital at Heyo. If you were a rational entrepreneur that was a capitalist like me and didn't really care about putting a man on the moon or driving self-driving car or any of this kind of stuff, it is so much smarter, right, to raise less than $1 million with a playbook and hit singles and doubles every 2 years in the form of $20 to $50 million exits over and over and over again, than it is to totally swing for the stars, raise a ton of capital, pray like hell that you go into the valuation and get out from under the liquidation preference, and sell for $800 million. So I knew that would spur some activity. Let's go directly to this man that shot his hand up very quickly. Do we have a microphone? Yes. Great. And start with your name, please.
Hi, my name is Christian Jorg. I run a SaaS marketing company that actually does a cognitive bot based in New York.
Great.
So my question to you is really, really interesting. And, most investors, though, right, want to see the moonshot, right? I mean, even if you do, we've raised a number of rounds, right? Even if you do your first money from friends and family, right? They want to see the big one, right? People are still talking about, everybody wants to see, that they're going to be really, really rich, right? So if you're giving them the message that you just very eloquently articulated, I don't think they're going to be that excited, right? Because all the numbers that you put up, right? When people raise 5, 10 million, they're hiring 50 salespeople, they sell absolutely nothing the first 6 months, right? This is why you get to the point that the returns get so low on additional ARR. But how do you get to that initial money? And you have to tell people that you actually have a different plan from the plan that you have, because they don't want to hear about the $20 million exit, right? They want to hear about the unicorn. So that's my question.
It's a good question, and what I'm telling you is I don't care much about emotions. I don't care about getting investors in a room excited about some vision that I kind of bullshitted and threw together 3 years of financials for that showed up into the right every time, right? That comes down to if you're a good sales guy. And you see a lot of the most successful entrepreneurs that raise the most capital, they're brilliant sales guys and gals, and they can raise a lot of capital. many times that is separate from your actual ability to go execute that plan. And that's why you see companies like a Fab, right? Or these companies raise tons of money. And there's obviously, now I'm picking one failure. There's a ton of success stories, right? The mere argument I'm making, and this is still something I can be convinced out of. I'm merely saying the data set I have of one-on-one 15-minute phone calls with 150 B2B SaaS companies over the past 6 months, I have now a playbook. And there's a direct line where if you raise less than $1 million and you're in an efficient niche where you can spend $1 per year, right, and get $5 back out in terms of ARR. And if you obviously do that growth, you can talk about valuations and exit strategies. I'm merely making the argument that it's such a smarter idea to play that game over the long term than cross your fingers, count on luck, sell a big vision that you may or may not get, and raise $100 million. Does that answer your question, Christian? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Very good. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.